So let me work through the syllabus and give you a picture or a roadmap of where we're going in this class. We have worked hard to put together 8 weeks of material, and every Tuesday for 8 weeks we're going to be releasing new material, and you'll have 10 weeks to complete that material. And really, we've culled the science and sort of brought into focus a topic or skill that each week we'll focus on. So the first week we're really going to sort of introduce you to the science of happiness and ask questions like, what is happiness and how does it relate to positive emotions like joy or sensations like pleasure? We're going to look at how scientists have reached a consensus about how to measure happiness. We're going to ask questions like, who are the happy people in the world and why should we study happiness? Why should we really care about this, and can we change our happiness? After that background, we're going to turn to one of the first big themes, maybe the most important theme about what produces happiness, and we're going to look at happiness and human connection. We're going to ask, how is it that our social ties and our connections to family members and friends and romantic partners and strangers gives rise to happiness? We're going to take a step back and look at how evolution has, in a way, made it an imperative to connect as a basis of happiness. And that'll help us think about what are the neurophysiological underpinnings of social connection and human happiness. In the third week, we're going to turn to the themes of compassion and kindness, which really, since people have been writing about the human condition, have been a focus in thinking about how do we create the greater good and human happiness. And we're going to ask questions like, does compassion, does kindness make us happy? What are the studies that show what the neurophysiological underpinnings are that help support human kindness? Are there forms of heroism, right, that we can practice in an everyday sense that help us scale up compassion and kindness to a broader level? In week 4, we're going to turn to the really interesting science of cooperation and reconciliation. And it really asks a basic question, which is, what are the strategies that we can use to deal with all the conflict and the struggles that we have with people in our social networks? So we're going to ask about, what are the values of compassion, cooperation to human survival? What's the best way to cooperate? What are the specific things you can do to kind of reconcile in the face of conflict, to forgive other people who may have harmed you? Techniques that have been tested with science that we can implement. In week 5, we're going to really distill this kind of exploding science on the topic of mindfulness, which is really kind of being in the present, having this non-judgmental awareness of what you're looking at and your experience and your sensations. We're going to ask, what is mindfulness? How do we cultivate it? What are the biological mechanisms that support mindfulness? We're going to look to really specific, concrete practices that really innovative scientists are starting to test in places like schools, healthcare settings, and even prisons and the like. We're really learning about how mindfulness can be a tool to cultivate health and happiness. In week 6, we're going to kind of continue this focus on training the mind, and we're going to ask in the general sense, what are the mental habits that you can work on that will cultivate happiness? How do we cultivate things like the right kind of goals to set, optimism, the ways to avoid toxic thoughts that impede us in our pursuit of happiness, things like perfectionism? How do we kind of overcome those toxic thoughts? And in this sort of discussion of the mental habits of happiness, we're going to look to a couple of really classic themes in this literature, which are, how do we find flow, right? That immersive feeling of engagement in what we're doing. How do we cultivate self-compassion, where we're kind to ourselves? In week 7, we're going to sort of shine our scientific spotlight on one of the really powerful themes in the science of happiness that has really concerned people as long as we've been thinking about how we get along with others, which is gratitude, the sense that things have been given to us that are sacred, if you will. We'll look at kind of the scientific studies, experiments and longitudinal studies of how gratitude has been shown scientifically to really promote happiness. We'll think about, what are the specific benefits to gratitude in our relationships, in schools, in our personal well-being, in our physical health. And then we'll think about what are some of the practices that can help you become more grateful on a daily basis. As we round out the course, we're going to finish up in week 8 on one question, which is fit, right? So we've given you a whole host of strategies that are science-based that help us become happy, help us benefit our physical health. And so one of the questions that you really should be asking as you move through this class, which is, well, what are the practices, be it gratitude or mindfulness or kindness or cooperation, forgiveness or the like, that help me become happy, right? What fits my character and my temperament most precisely and most beneficially? So we'll take on that question of fit and really finding your own sort of personal repertoire of happiness skills or strategies. We'll think about sort of lasting themes that you can really take from this class. We'll sort of signal really new, exciting areas of science in this study of happiness. Things like the benefits of awe and the feeling of being in the presence of something bigger than yourself, and beauty. And then we'll really kind of put together these ideas and think about how to personalize what you've learned in this class to sort of take your next steps in your journey in the pursuit of happiness. So next up, with this as a conceptual background, we're going to talk about, well, what are you going to do practically for this class in terms of, the grading and the assignments and the keeping up to date on this material.